I will say that this is why I usually tell people, if you're going to post something online, Twitter, Facebook, even in your comics content, ask yourself, is this something I might have to apologize for later? I don't care if it's your political beliefs, your religious beliefs, anything. If you're going to make some snarky comment, is this something that can be taken out of context, that can be used against me, and can hurt me? There are jokes I have almost made, and I thought, if someone said this, I think they were a fucking dick. And another example, not webcomic, but a very good example, someone should have fucking known better, was The Onion this year got in a lot of trouble on their Twitter account because the person with the Twitter account was at Academy Awards night, and the young girl from the Hunger Games.
That was awesome.
Someone made a comment because
it was Beast of the Southern Wild.
Okay,
like the 8-year-old
girl, and they made a comment. Like, is it just me or does she come off as a stuck-up little cunt? Because I guess a lot of people have been like, there's this weird hate for her, and they were trying to make fun of it. But it didn't come out that way.
No. And they called the 8-year-old girl a cunt.
They called an 8-year-old girl a cunt. And, the person who ran the Twitter account tried to say, it's satire. No, it's not. You fucking failed. If we can't tell what you're making fun of, that's not Poe's Law. That's just you don't understand how to do satire.
Yeah.
And actually, the CEO of The Onion the next day released a statement on it, and it was actually a really good apology.
It was a very good apology.
And it's actually something, if you ever find you have to apologize for something you've done and you are sorry, it's a good letter to read because it takes total ownership. He's like, we're a satirical news site. We say things that upset people. This was not satire. These people in our employment stepped over a line. They will be punished. We are setting new guidelines. And then he ended it with an actual apology to the young actress, which ended with the words, "You deserved better than this." He owned it. He walked away with it. If you have to apologize for something, and I've seen so many web cartoonists do this for years, I'm sorry you're offended. Fuck you.
I say as we sit up here swearing like that.
Well, I'm not sorry if I offend you. That's the thing. Like, I have never apologized for something I didn't feel. If a store order got messed up, I apologize. It's my fault.
I think we're getting a little off
topic here. Sorry. That's what I do.
We'll talk more about the business side of making comics tomorrow at 10:30 in the Sofitel Nice
That was
Room.
a preview. It was totally cool.
Yeah.
Sure, a couple of things. If you are looking for your own hosting, or sometimes there is even like a built-in WordPress hosting. WordPress has been used by many a web cartoonist.
Comic Press.
There's Comic Press.
I love Comic Press.
Easel, which I think Frumpf, who is actually what saved Comic Press and redeveloped it for years. Comic Easel he stands by. There's also Webcomic and Inkblot, which is a combination theme and plugin. There's Manga Press. There's Strip Show. There's many ways to go about doing
What this comes down to is you really don't actually have to know about how the internet works anymore. Which is beautiful, because when I started, you kind of had to have some idea how the internet works. These
you need
days,
a little idea. Come on,
you do need some.
You need a little.
If you want to stand out, you're gonna need to either learn how to code a little bit, or if you want to stand out more,
if you want your
find somebody.
If you want your web page too. But if you want to put a comic on the internet, you don't need to know much of anything.
All you need to know is your site has to be easy to navigate, fast to load. They need to be able to find all your archive, the previous comic button, the latest comic button, and if you want to store, have it. It has to load fast, easy. As cool as have a really pretty, shiny new site, if it slows things down or they have to know the secret code to get the archive, you failed.
Before we take your question, I got a couple more things on that topic.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. This is
decided.
I would say it's like your homepage, your URL should always point to your latest comic if you are still updating, or to the beginning of the latest chapter if you're very episodic or something like that. Also, I would also say if you have a strip, there's no reason why that shouldn't be right at the top and nobody has to scroll for it. If you have a page, the first top third should definitely be visible because people want to see, hey, I'm going to this site. Oh, hey, there's that comic right there. I can see that, and I can make a judgment call if this is something I want to continue reading right away. You shouldn't have to scroll for it. Some of those free sites have got ads stacked on top of ads, and other people put more ads in there, and you have to scroll for it, or the archive you can't find, or the previous button. That makes people not really want to care too much, and they leave your site.
Yeah. You're fighting for attention span, and that's a very difficult thing to do.
Your question.
What do you do like when you're just starting out and you're kind of worried about people stealing your stuff? Like, I'm always really worried to post pictures, like photos or images I've drawn because I'm afraid someone's going to take it.
Have you been on DeviantArt a lot? Or?
Okay.
Well, but a webcomic person who I follow, she's had that problem before.
Here's the thing. People are going to take your stuff. Most of the time, it won't actually hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. We want to be precious about... Not always. I mean, there are times it definitely sucks. And if someone's selling merchandise
Right. Yeah.
or something like that, that's a problem. But 90% of the time, someone's just going to reblog it on Tumblr. And it's a shame you're not going to get, the credit for that. That sucks.
Don't put high-res art online.
No, 72 DPI is what a web resolution is.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's also, you don't want large
72.
pixels.
Yeah, anything that someone can print out and do high quality. Here's the thing is, by creating it and posting it, just put copyright your name.
Mm-hmm.
You own it. You have copyright is implied.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to register your copyright, it's like $50 to $100, and you can do that. Like I say, send in a CD of the art and fill the forms. The main benefit to registering your copyright versus implied copyright is if you just have implied copyright, you can prove, hey, look, they took my art, there's a cap on damages.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a registered copyright, the government's like, well, you guys should have looked that up. Uncap the damages, sue for what you can. And that's the benefit. But
unless
or watermark.
Implied
I,
no, you put. I would honestly watermarks. If especially your comic, people are looking
Not
at
the comic, but if you're throwing
if you're throwing a doodle on.
I would just put. I put copyright my name at the bottom of them, and I will also put my URL because some people will just share it somewhere, and it's not like they're trying to steal it. Like, oh, this is kind of cool. Click reload on their site. Well, cool. My URL's there. They didn't take it out, so people will find me from that.
Some people will actually take out your URL and paste their own.
but again, what is the damage to you?
You're not getting the traffic that this other site is.
Well, in that case, though, you can also contact their host.
selling merchandise.
If they're selling merchandise, that's different. But 90% of the time when art gets stolen, it's just linking around all over.
Everyone has a different opinion. But honestly, if it's something where you can prove, hey, I have this here, you can usually hold their web host if they're unresponsive, and things get taken care of that way.
You can also send in a DMCA notice.
Yeah, Digital Millennium Copyright. What's the act?
Act.
DMC Act.
Yeah.
And it's basically a takedown notice that says you have not responded, and there's damages on those.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing: remember, if you abuse that, if you just start throwing there, and I've seen people do that in YouTube videos because they hate someone, start filing DMCA, you can be fined for filing false DMCA claims, and you can be sued through court for it too. But if someone is really just refusing to respond, you can do a DMCA, and I've had it written that, and also I've written cease and desist orders.
Yeah.
So you have protection, but the thing is, you can't let that cripple you from wanting to share your art. If you're going to spend, it's one of those things where if you fall in that rabbit hole, you don't reach the bottom because you're always worried, well, someone might take this. Yeah, but if you don't take the risk of putting it out there, someone might not enjoy it and then look more what you're doing.
Yeah, that's where I was trying to go with it. I mean, because there are things you can do if your stuff gets stolen, but there's nothing you can do about the fact that no one ever saw it to begin with.
So, just honestly slap your copyright on the bottom of it and your name. This gentleman is hanging up.
So can I talk about advertising a little bit more? Is that
I kind of want to move on to a little bit more stuff.
Well, I mean,
let's just-
what's your question? Is that a real quick
Do you have
question?
anything in specific you want to know?
It's probably a question you'd have to deconstruct.
Business
if you're gonna be
webcomics.
at our panel tomorrow
business
morning,
of webcomics will
that'd
probably go a lot
be better
about
word
advertising.
to ask that.
Thank you
Thank you, though.
for being so nice about it.
Yes. There's a few things that I do like to point out. It's not 1996. Don't autoplay sounds on your website ever. You don't need a splash page unless you're an 18-plus comic.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, what? What do you mean?
It's like the whole, welcome to my site. This site has adult content. Ogloff has it on the days that pornography
As
comics.
they should.
Yeah.
They should.
There's other things. It's like you're just starting out. Don't look at the success of other successful cartoonists and try to do what they're doing. You're going to be small. If you get big really quick, that is fantastic and rare. There are over 30,000 webcomics that have been online at least, and there's maybe like 100 that are incredibly profitable.
Also,
I would say less than that.
I was being generous with that.
Yeah.
I also remember this, though. Every one of those people who's doing real well that you're, like, envious of, they have someone they look at and go, oh, I wish I was doing that.
Yeah.
It's just a reality. But also, another thing is, someone else's success does not detract from your own.
Never try to take another webcomic artist down because you're jealous of them. It just makes you look like a jerk, and there's plenty enough readers to go around.
Yeah.
You know, and it's honestly, I have had people try to start fight. I have a rule: I will not on my comic site start drama with another cartoonist. I've made fun of them other places, especially my friends. I'll happily do it because why not? But on my comic, in my comics blog, in the comic itself, I will not name out cartoonists. And everyone has someone they don't like. It's just a reality. Because it doesn't help me, and most of my readership doesn't care. And if nothing else, it's probably going to alienate people, especially like, this person's a douchebag, da-da-da. That person just had a major surgery, is having a hard time. You're the bully now. Good job.
Yeah.
And of course, when it comes to selling stuff, you shouldn't even be concerned about that unless you're doing like sketches or something fairly simple. But you shouldn't really look at serious merchandise unless you have maybe, I would even say, 10,000 unique readers per update.
I was honestly advised not to look at anything that involves any significant investment money until I had 40,000.
But still, there's some things you can just do if you want to make.
Oh yeah,
you want to print this comic, you can print on demand sort of stuff.
Well,
if you can make buttons
run.
cheaply, hey, maybe you can do some fun. But don't be so serious. Like, oh, this is going to be my bread and butter. I'm going to make T-shirts and.
Yeah.
Well, on top of that, like I've been doing this long enough that the things that I sold a lot of in the early years of my comics, which are T-shirts, I don't sell those anymore. My reader doesn't give a shit about that. But they love prints and posters. Used to, I couldn't give that away. Your audience, what they want will change over time. The one thing that does generally stand is books sell well in general. But
I want to say something about that has very much to do with the start of a comic. Figure out printing dimensions before you draw anything.
Oh, yes.
Because I was like, oh, I'll draw a webcomic and this will be fun. And I started drawing and suddenly I had this 100-page archive at a non-standard size.
Yeah.
And now I have a 500-page comic that I'm drawing that will never be printable at a standard size. So before you set pencil to paper, figure out what your print size and dimensions are and draw to that if you ever want to be involved in printing a book.
Also,
which is getting cheaper and easier all the time.
Yes. Have masters, multiple duplicate back of the masters that are print resolution.
Yep.
Color, a minimum print resolution is 150. I recommend 300.
At least 300.
Yeah, black and white, 300 to 600.
Actually, a lot of, like, especially print on demands, it's 300.
Yeah, so you need to have that. You need to have those print dimensions. Also, if you're doing a long-form story comic and you want to do it in books eventually, plot out where it ends. So you don't have like, oh, book one ends in the middle of some action is a weird dangling hang. You want to actually have it end either dramatic or have a swell, like what you would read. Yeah, it's kind of hard, but you have to really sit down, and a lot of that is outlining it, looking ahead, and also foreshadowing it.
Yeah.
Though there is something to be said about webcomics and the nature of the internet. If you really are wanting to break out and do an infinite canvas and really just want to play with what you can, don't let printing hold you back if that's really what you want to try out. But also understand you're going to be severely limited in the way that you can distribute it or try to sell it in the future. But I'm not going to say don't experiment if you really want to. Just understand the risks.
Plus, you could, go like Aaron Diaz, who does infinite canvas stuff all the time, and somehow that bastard is breaking it down into books. It's doing him a lot of extra work, but his pages are gorgeous, so, I mean...
The nice thing about doing your own comic is, since you're not working for a syndicate, you have a lot of freedom and creativity. I have done storylines, like small ones, where I did watercolor. I did a role-playing storyline a couple years ago where all the in-game aspects were done with, like, pen, ink, and watercolor. I did a similar this year where it was a loose ink brush. I couldn't do that for a syndicate because it would be scary and not possibly marketable. You have to be happy with your end product. Yes, you want to have an audience, but if you, as an audience member, hate what you're doing, it's going to show, and it will kill it.
And I want to say, that's actually the reason I'm doing a webcomic is partly because I reached a point in my life where for a while there I couldn't find anything I wanted to read. So I said, okay, I'm a 22-year-old female, I'm going to make a comic, fine. And since then I've had all these wonderful, unreasonably good portfolio reviews with some very highly placed people in the field. And they say, oh, this is kind of interesting, tell me about this. And I tell them about the comic and, sort of the intended audience. They go, oh, that's nice. We could never sell this. And I said, yeah, that's why it's a webcomic. I know that no major publisher would ever touch this. But it's a webcomic, so I don't have to care. I can make exactly the comic that I mean to. And I think it's kind of a shame when sometimes I see people making a webcomic that doesn't take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. They're following all the expected, all the expected
Well, that's what they want to
things.
do, it's one thing.
Well, yeah, but occasionally it clangs and feels a little like, well, this is the thing that you're supposed to do at this point.
In the early days of webcomics, and I do more of like a syndicated daily strip style, but except I swear a lot. But there were a lot of webcomics who were trying to keep to that medium because they were hoping a syndicate would pick them up. Syndicates are dying, and they're dying painfully and slowly because they can't keep up. And also, like a syndicated cartoonist now, you start off making about $22,000 a year, and they like that offer I had once. They can get rid of you and keep the work and replace you.
Do people know what a syndicate is? Are we even speaking English?
Comic syndicates are
what's in the newspaper is on a syndicate, basically.
They're basically companies that kind of distribute it. It's like how Fox, has Simpsons, and that's kind of owns them. They syndicate TV shows as well. Well, comic syndicates like Peanuts was Universal Press Syndicate. Garfield for many years was Universal Press Syndicate. They have King Features, which is like Popeye, Beetle Bailey, High and Lois. These syndicates basically hand contact the newspapers and sell them the properties.
They're the middlemen.
But they own your stuff.
And they care mostly about merchandising because that's where the money is in comic strips. And I'll be honest, I make a lot of money off merchandising on my own. I will not pretend. That's where a lot of my sales come from. But the flip side is you have to appease them. And you have to make them happy. Now, granted, the more money they make, the more cartoonists they can hire. Although nowadays, since newspapers are all owned by the same few companies, and they want all their markets to be similar, you're not going to go to a separate town and have, new comics I need to read. Like, that's the page is shrinking and there's not a lot of space for it. And I usually get the same thing. People are like, your comic will never be in a newspaper. Why the fuck do I want it to be in a newspaper? That sounds horrible. I like that I can... My first comic was a back alley abortion joke. That was fun. I enjoy that. I could do horrible storylines about the main character's closest friend committing suicide and have him address how it is a very tragic thing, but there's a horrible dark humor to it when you're trying to accept someone's death. And I couldn't have done that with... in this week's comic, Garfield accepts Dodie's untimely demise. That's not going to happen. Unfortunately, because I would read the shit out of that. Odie wrapping his tongue around and noosing it. Oh.
I have two more final points I want to make before this thing closes.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I got two major things before I open up for more questions. First, I do highly recommend getting a URL, even if you're going to have it redirect to one of the free hosting sites.
Yeah.
Do not use words that are going to be commonly misspelled, sound like other words. Do not replace numbers for other letters. Do not use spelled out letters or numbers.
It should be something that you can say to a person and then they can go and type it without you having to explain it.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to explain it. You don't get creative. Don't get creative with your URL. Just don't. Unless you buy the real one and then the fun and silly one as well.
Yeah.
The second thing is buying things will not automatically make you better. Buying a Cintiq will not make you better at drawing art. Buying expensive pens will not make you better. Buying expensive special paper will not make you better. These are all tools. All tools need to be mastered. I've seen some fantastic artwork with a mouse and MS Paint. It is amazing of what you can do when you master the seemingly simplest
master
tool.
Whatever tools you're using.
Right.
Practice. I start my day, I get up at 5 to 6 a.m., even though I'm self-employed. I know, it sucks. And my first hour or two a day is drawing, sketching, sitting at my desk. When I leave my house, because I will leave my house to go eat, so I'm not home all day, glaring at cats, I will sit in a restaurant and I will draw. Or I'll send a comic strip, and I'll draw the employees. I'll draw people walking by. I don't usually keep them. I usually give the people. If someone sees me drawing them, can I have it? Yeah, sure, whatever.
If they catch you drawing them.
Well, actually, I've gotten to the point where if I'm at a restaurant and I know the employees, I'll say, "Hey, can I draw you practice?" And most yeah, as long as I can have it. I don't want to keep a picture of my server. The most beautiful busboy ever, my wall. But it's you have to draw. You have to draw. Between SP and my dropping out of art school, there was 2 years I didn't draw. I had to relearn to draw. I used to be a watercolorist who could do very photorealistic. I don't do that anymore.
That will atrophy.
It's like any muscle. If you don't use it, it withers and dies.
Yeah. So, are there any final questions? Yes. Wait.
Actually,
Okay.
I have a question about creating a webcomic. How do you decide how to place the panels of a word balloons?
I read Scott McCloud's book, Making Comics.
It's probably the best answer you're going to get as far as if you haven't read Scott McCloud's Making Comics. It should be in your library if you're a cartoonist.
Also, look at comics that you like and find compelling.
What was it called?
Making Comics.
is it the Understanding Comics?
No, it's called
Making Comics.
That's
Not
the
that
first one.
He has 3 books: Understanding Comics, Reinventing Comics, and Making Comics. Making Comics is a really good breakdown of stuff to think about and consider when drawing or writing a comic.
Also, think about what are you trying to do a daily? Like, am I doing like a daily strip kind of fun comic or something? It's a comic book, so it's a page layout. And because what I do is basically a daily strip comic. So I just do flat square. Although sometimes I will go beyond the 4 and do 22 panels today because I'm dumb.
Are you talking about as far as how a reader is going to actually read your balloons in the panels? Is that what you're kind of going?
No, I know how to place those.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Western
Always
version
just
and the Eastern version.
Take into consideration, sort of sketch out your panels and figure out a spot. Okay, words have to go here somewhere. You want people to read this before they see the action or whatever. Make room for that so you're not having to put balloons over something you took time to draw and now people can't see it because you put a balloon over it.
Also, please do not flip your pages. If you're writing in English, your readers will be reading it in English and not in Japanese.
If you are not a native speaking person from a country that goes from right to left, don't do it. You're just being pompous at that point.
Well, you're confusing your readers.
You're confusing your readers, and that is not your market. You have no right to do that because you're not a part of that culture. And it's
That's going far.
But anyway,
I
it is going to confuse your readers. It's going to confuse them.
You're not selling to that market, so don't do that.
Well, the thing is, if you're selling, my comic is for manga readers and the people who like the hardcore, like I want to read my subtitle or my translated manga.
Right.
They will enjoy it. But you have to know your audience.
I would say you're also limiting your audience.
Yeah, you are. But if you're cool with that, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to have a small readership, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
That guy's got a question.
Yeah.
Which one?
Comment actually.
Oh.
There's actually been a lot of comics that are popularized now that are actually just doing one panel.
Yeah,
single panel.
That's valid.
Yeah.
Like the most popular things. Like there's this thing called Ava's Demon that's really big getting really big right now. It's only a few hundred pages so far. It's got animated panels and music and stuff, and then obviously there's Homestuck.
Everybody wants to be Homestuck.
Homestuck's a little bit more involved than a single panel comic, though.
I don't want to be Homestuck because I don't know his readers.
Every comic is only one panel.
Yeah, I can also tell you that
you can do it however you want.
I can also tell you that people we've talked to who do single panel comics, they're incredibly difficult to do.
I couldn't do it.
They are very difficult. They're not easy.
Done them sometimes. It can be a pain in the ass. This gentleman has a question before we get done.
I'm not an artist. I'm a writer.
Yeah.
Would you have any advice on where could I cast my net?
Honey, would you like to field that one as my writer?
I'm married, my artist.
That's unfair.
To be honest, that's a lot of times really, really hard to attract an artist because an artist has to put a lot more work into figuring out if you're good than you do have to figuring out whether or not they're good.
And it's not their project unless you're paying them, which,
I'm paying.
Yeah.
This is how you get an artist.
If you're paying an artist, then you go online and you have them say, look, here's my page rate. If they like it, be willing to pay for a couple test pages to see if you guys can work together, see if they can read your scripts. Also understand, if you're paying them, you've bought a great right. It's called redlining, which means you say, no, this doesn't look right. You have to redraw it. And if they can't handle that, you fire them.
Divorce them.
In very rare, in few cases, you are able to sort of work something out with an actual artist.
Yeah.
If they're smart, they're going to want a contract of some sort or rights or sharing. Now, I won't count on this. I'm personally working with an artist that is working for free. I'm basically also working for free.
You lucked out.
I lucked out. He enjoys the comic a lot. He loves the characters. He's done very good at interpreting the characters.
And all it took was him networking on comic artists for like 10 years via podcast before he managed to find such an artist.
That was mean.
No, I'm just saying, that's really hard. He knows a lot of artists.
Yeah.
To find someone good who was willing to do that, he had to know a lot of artists
for the last few years. A lot of people I got to guest on my show, I've contacted through Twitter. And I've got them on.
Luna has a question.
Oh, I've also got another thing for that guy.
Oh, Twilight Sparkle has to say something first.
Just also keep in mind what you're writing and what kind of art you're looking for.
Yeah.
Because since I know I'm writing for Lee here, I know I'm probably never going to do anything with cars in it or giant robots. Even though I would like to write stuff with giant robots, but Lee will not draw them.
Nope.
And if you're like doing a gritty crime drama, you probably don't want someone who specializes in happy, little chibi manga characters.
Yeah.
Unless you're going for some really weird avant-garde thing. I mean,
a death in Chibi Town.
Lucky Nice is actually kind of like that.
We should probably put together a panel about working as a team.
Collaborative?
Actually, you guys need to, because I have heard, I get that question a lot. I'm always like, I don't do it.
If anyone wants to ask me about collaboration, find me.
Yeah.
I will yammer at you for ages.
I think I'll have to make that one of my last podcasts.
Do it, actually.
Luna.
I wanted to ask about people who write and draw their own comics. About how much time do you spend scripting versus drawing?
It's drawing is the easiest thing. I'll be honest. If I'm lucky and I know going in exactly what I want to do. I'm talking about the average 4-panel comic for me. It's 2 hours. And probably an hour to hour 20 minutes of that is writing, refining, and then draw, scan, color, letter. And even then, I have done comics where it's like, I'm supposed to go, I hate the script, and I rewrite it right there for the art.
I hate you a little bit right now, hearing how long it takes you to draw.
That is the rarity. That is not how it works for me usually. And I've had, the longest I spent on a comic was over 30 hours. And that was a nightmare. And I've had comics where I've actually spent 3 or 4 days on them, and I realized I can't post it, so I got to throw something else up and work on the side. Because art is important. You need to know who the characters are. It needs to attract the eye. But if they like the art, they get the words, and they're like, "This is shit," they're gone just as fast. And you have to have that hook. And I spend a lot of time scripting, planning. Like I said, when I started my comic off, I had a 10-year plan. I revised it once a year because things change over time. And then when the 10th year came around, I did another 6-year plan. And I even have a tentative, if I want to keep SP going beyond that, I have an outline for through year 25. If I want to keep going that far. And I may not want to. I may be at year 16 going, this shit's done. And if that's the case, if SP ends on
an exit strategy.
SP ends on Friday, the new comic would start on Monday. Because I have other plans built up.
So is the pure creative force behind your comic, do you think you could ever trust a writer with your characters?
I have done it twice. And it was one time it ended a friendship. And those comics are on my site now. And that is, I share part of the blame because I didn't know how to edit someone. But it just, egos were hurt. The other time was a gentleman named Eric Burns, who used to run a website called WebSnark. I have known Eric since the 90s. We used to write in a creative fiction group together called Super Guy, which is a comedy superhero writing group a long time ago. And he basically wrote a script. He's like, just be harsh. But he knew my characters very well. Would I bring a writer in to write my comic full time? Fuck no. Because it's a very personal thing. And I've had oh, you want to offend someone? Talk to someone who does a comic full-time on their own, writing art, everything. Obviously, you need my help because I'm the best writer. I'm a better artist. Fuck you. I have a file of like 300 or 400 of those emails from the entire run of my comic. I'm the guy you need to make your comic popular. That's funny because I've never heard of you, but you've heard of me. And I have sent that reply many times.
The guy in the suit had another question, although
this will be our last question because we are over time right now.
But there's nothing in here for 30 minutes either.
True, but people might want.
But no, I mean, I'm saying.
We're keeping you all.
I was just wondering about, like, is there, do any of you who do more serious comics that, like, take more dynamic work, like if you're doing, like, a serious manga or a bunch of things that generally have more than 4 panels, do you generally do a drawing draft before the manuscript? Or, like a storyboard, and something you do between the script and the drawings?
The layouts.
I got the simplest one. I start with outlines, and then I work on a script, and then I have a very loose script, and it's, again, with my relationship with the artist. He's very good at interpreting things I got. He'll come and ask me. So it's very bland, not bland, but it's very, you got dialogue, and I got sort of the expression or how they want to look, and I give a direction, and then I just pass it on to my artist. He does a great job of interpreting.
It's more of a question for the person who does the art.
I also do the art.
Yeah.
Or sometimes, but it's like also, because I also give art direction in the writing as well of how I want it to be. If I feel it's a little bit complex, I will go ahead and draw up a sort of sketch of how I'm imagining it. And, that's a little bit more weird and complicated.
And if my writer did that, she'd be sleeping on the couch.
It doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah. What we have is she has an outline, so I know kind of what's coming ahead of time. She does big chunks of script ahead of time. I work on them a scene at a time. And then I do layouts. And my layouts are scribbly, awful messes with the words in. But in the layout, I try to establish where the word balloons are, how many panels, where the figures are, and the aesthetic way that the characters, the layouts, and the basic block shading, not the fiddly stuff, but the basic block stuff is on the page. Because it should look basically like if I was holding my page really far away from me, that would be what it would look like. With really big, like, simplified, dopey faces, and kind of symbols occasionally to tell the characters apart if I'm not going to be rendering their figures. But yeah, I have the layouts. I would never draw on my page without layouts because I wouldn't know how much room I need to leave for the other panels. So I need to know everything that's going to go on that page before I start actually drawing it. So I do a layout, and then I do my pencils, and then I say, "Hey Lisa, how are these pencils?" She goes, yeah, that's good. And then I ink it. And then she says, "Hey, you messed up that thing." And I said, "Too bad."
Do you guys have tables in here? Or where can they find your work? Where can these people find our work?
The internet.
Well, what URL?
Godseekercomic.com.
You can find my current sort of stumbling to update comic at arjacomic.com.
But also Webcomic Beacon.
Also the webcomicbeacon.com for the podcast.
I have somethingpositive.net. I also have a table in the exhibitor hall, which I also not be at tonight because it's closed. If you find me there tomorrow, noon or after, I will do a free sketch for you. Free fast sketch.
Oh, and you can find us at SpringCon coming up here. We'll have our books and some anthology that we've been, a couple anthologies that we've been in, and some other goodies.
Okay.
If you would like more of us, basically, tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. in the Sofitel nice room. It's the
Sofitel?
It's the Sofitel.
Yep. I have a reader gathering that night at the same room, 8 o'clock.
Nice.
Okay. So we'll talk more about business-sided questions in comic creation. Thank you all for coming to this panel.
Thank you, guys.
If you need any more questions, I will say you can email me at festworks@gmail.com. I can give you my notes. Just say Anime Detour 2013, and I will do my best to answer you.
Cool. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Get the fuck out! You're done! It's over!
Fine, let's go. Come on, guys.
You're not wanted!